A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us on this edition of Spectrum Extra when we review the major events of the week. My name is Kenneth Anderson Lukwago, your host. I have a panel of three people today. The two are already here, and let me introduce them. The Honorable Mike Sebalu. Honorable Mike Sebalu is the team leader at the Africa Integration Agenda. He's a former Ugandan IALA representative and the past district governor, Rotary 9213. Good evening, Honorable Mike Sebalu. It's a pleasure having you on this panel.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kenny. Good evening, listeners and those that are viewing on various platforms associated with this media house. I'm glad to be back home after a while. I've taken a bit of a sabbatical to concentrate on Rotary work.
Enjoying the trappings of Rotary.
I was a governor, and it was a full-time commitment and engaging of doing good in the world and serving above self. But I'm back, and I'm glad to be part of this panel. Glad to share a moment with my sister, Sarah. I've been following her on her social media platforms. So thank you for what you are doing in serving community.
Thank you so much, Honorable Mike Sebalu, for joining us on this edition of Spectrum Extra. Dr. Sarah Birete, Executive Director, Center for Constitutional Governance, Pundit on Human Rights and Governance Matters, Sidon Elections Observer. She's actually chairperson of a global network of local-based election observers. And, you know, they, from time to time, do look at issues of governance, leadership, and elections. Good evening, Sarah. It's a pleasure having you on this show.
Good evening, radio listeners and fellow panelists. And Kenneth, thank you for inviting me back. It's an honor to be back here on the show and speak about the passing of the global icon, Pope Francis.
Thank you so much for joining us. Our third panelist is on the way. When he arrives here, I will introduce him. The biggest story this week has actually been the passing on of Pope Francis, and his death coming as a sudden thing. We know he had been in hospital for 38 days, but he had showed up to kickstart the Holy Week, and all of a sudden, a day after he had addressed the gathering at St. Peter's Square, we were told the Pope had passed on. Well, according to the many commentaries we have seen, he has left behind a deep, deep, deep legacy, and we have been urged to actually emulate it. President Yoweri Museveni led Ugandans in actually paying tribute to him, and in his condolence message, which was issued on Tuesday, he said his readiness and enthusiasm to deal with other faiths, such as the Muslims, the Orthodox Christians, it meant that he was a religious leader that was truly in the track of Jesus, as Jesus taught in the parable of the Good Samaritan. His legacy, love, and unity and service to humanity will endure for generations to come. He said the Pope will be remembered for his extraordinary spiritual leadership and a deeply respected theologian whose unwavering commitment to the faith revitalized the Church's mission in an increasingly secular world. He has been talked about as one of those biggest peace lovers in the country, and according to his messages, he has been reiterating and calling on global leaders to actually put down the guns and work towards peace. He did visit Uganda in 2015, and we remember very well the things he did here, including going to Namugongo, where he led mass. He did visit South Sudan after he had met the leaders involved in the conflict in the Vatican and kissed their feet in that extraordinary act of humility. So today we'll be paying tribute to Pope Francis and looking at some of the key lessons that we can actually take from him. And we know his funeral will be taking place tomorrow. And thereafter, cardinals will enter the conclave to elect a new pope from among themselves. So let's take a moment and pay tribute to him and also look at some of the key lessons we can take from him. I want to begin with you, Honorable Mike Sebalu, on this particular matter.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm looking at our departed and celebrated Pope Francis in different mirror spaces. One as a Rotarian, as Rotary we pay tribute to the Pontiff, for he served above self, did good in the world, and identified with the downtrodden, was available to support those in need of support. He was ready, willing, and available to do things differently, and he was able to carry forward that needed to be carried forward. He was able to stop what needed to be stopped, and he was able to start doing what was never done, but he thought it would be good to do. And that makes him a pope with a difference. So on behalf of the Rotary Fraternity in Uganda, I would like to extend our heartfelt condolences and at the same time celebrate a life of an icon, a leader who is exemplary, a leader who did not put so much emphasis on office and title, but a leader who put emphasis on legacy, how he would leave people, how people would feel after him. And indeed it is coming out. My district governor, Anne Nkutu, has already visited the Pope Nuncio and signed the book, but we continue to join the rest of the world, the Catholic fraternity, and all people of goodwill in celebrating the life of our departed leader. Now, there are lessons to learn from Pope. One, simplicity. He was a simple leader who was very accessible and reached out hitherto unreached communities, unappreciated communities, or unvalued communities. And that way he was able to identify with them, to identify with their cause, give them hope, and give them inspiration, give them motivation, and give them empowerment. He is indeed a leader who has put a lot of meaning to leadership. That leadership is not necessarily a title or an office, but it is the way you manage the affairs of the office and the way you get connected, more so to the ordinary mortals under your jurisdiction and leadership. And that servant leadership is indeed something we need in the world. If we can get more servant leaders, definitely the world would be a better place. Even at his level, he was ready to take risks. Some of the innovations and engagements that he undertook would be of something that maybe other leaders would fear to engage or undertake, but you find that the kind of spaces he interacted in, some people may feel like that is not for the Pope. The Pope shouldn't identify with such and such. But he was able to break the glass ceiling and the barriers and reach out different sections of the community. And in the East African region, I think we should celebrate him even much more. He gave us unprecedented attention. He was in Uganda, he was in South Sudan, and he was in the DRC.
Even went to Nairobi.
Now, that is something. It is not something we can take for granted, but what is it that we learn from him? One, he valued his faith, and definitely our case, Namugongo Shrine, and the matters remains a big thing for Uganda in terms of our visibility and brand recognition as a country and as being faithful. So we really need to appreciate, and the best way of paying tribute and honoring him and honoring his memory is by championing the cause that he stood for. And for us in Rotary, basically it rhymes with our four-way test. When we talk about the four-way test, in everything you think, say, or do, is it the truth? He stood for truthfulness. Is it fair? He stood for fairness. And he did advocated for fairness. Will it build goodwill and better friendship? Definitely. He's reaching out to different constituencies, was about creating that fair, that element of connectivity. And finally, is it beneficial to all concerned? What he preached, what he professed, and what he stood for was beneficial to all humankind. That's why his leadership was not limited to only the Catholic faithfuls. He went beyond that, and he was reaching out to humanity in the broader meaning and broader sense of humanity. Indeed, he qualifies to be a global leader of our time, a big influencer of our time, and a game changer of our time, and someone definitely who created an enabling environment, an enabler for all to enjoy and appreciate leadership at such a global level.
All right. Robert Mike Sebalu, you raised quite a number of issues therein, but we'll be coming back later to you to dig deeper on them, especially how they relate to our leaders today, whether they can actually emulate the late and do some of the things that you've actually talked about. But let's now bring in Dr. Sarah Bilete. Dr. Sarah Bilete, Pope Francis has passed on. We saw there's so many messages coming in, some even from Uganda here, including our own president. You've heard also from Honorable Mike Sebalu the number of things he talks about that he embodied and the lessons that we can take from his life, but also his leadership, bearing in mind that he was not just a spiritual leader, he was also a head of state of the Vatican.
You know, the Pope's legacy has been captured under a phrase of a revolutionary pastoral Pope. He led with mercy, humility, compassion, social justice, and a commitment to reforming the church from within. He also took a bold step on global issues like conflict, climate change, inequality, migration issues, and pushed for interfaith dialogue under the inclusivity principle. So when you look at his role in conflicts, of course, he visited South Sudan. Among the countries, he came to Africa 5 times. South Sudan, he had thought he would mediate the conflict between Riek Machar and Salva Kiir. Unfortunately, those people are still fighting, even when he kissed their feet. So I hope that this passing really could touch their heart and they stop driving that country into conflict. He spoke loudly on Gaza conflict. Even his last meeting with the Vice President of the U.S. was about ending that Gaza conflict and the suffering of people, especially children and women. He spoke about injustice wherever it existed. Spoke about the crisis of climate change and did not just call it a climate change crisis, but a global and spiritual crisis to save nature. He stood out, given his lifestyle, consistency. He said he was from among the poor. His life before becoming the Pope, his life as a Pope, remained consistent over 80 years. He shunned away from enjoying the luxury of the Pope's palace and chose to stay in the guest house in the Vatican, associating with ordinary people. He had his going about his business, fixing his specs, mixing with ordinary people, dining with them. And that consistent character throughout 80 decades is remarkable. That's what we miss in leadership, consistency. He recentered the church on pro-people issues. He was known as a pope for the poor. He made a comment championing the cause of income inequality, saying the economy kills. Look at what is happening in the world today. Indeed, the economy kills. Even in Uganda here, a bad economy kills people. He stood, globally, compassion, but he did not even shy away from critical issues. I know I like watching that clip where he was asked to comment about the gay people. I know this is a very contentious issue in Uganda. But he said, who am I to judge? The Bible says, do not judge. And indeed, that's what the Bible says. You leave judgment to God. So he was a man of his word, consistent with his values. he lived what he preached, and he fronted pro-people issues. That's what stood out.
All right. I want to go back a little bit to Honorable Mike Sebalo to try and follow up some of the things that you stated. And I want us to begin with broadening those issues. And I pick out one of the key issues you put forward is the issue of servant leadership. When you look at the leaders that we have today, especially in Africa, are they actually emulating some of these values? They are among the many thousands of people who have actually sent in messages talking about the kind of leadership the Pope actually stood for. Have we been able to reach that point where we can have servant leadership? And by servant leadership, what are some of the attributes that we should be looking at?
Yeah, thank you very much. Servant leadership is in a nutshell, putting the people first, putting the people you lead first. And for you to put the people you lead first, you need to have empathy. Try to put yourselves in their shoes, you know? And once you put yourselves in their shoes, then you can get a vantage position of appreciating what they go through, how they go through it, and maybe you can be in position to prescribe better ways of empowering those people, inspiring them, and motivating them to be the best versions of themselves. You know, if you are a leader, you need to see that the people you lead get better and better. And you try to create modalities and avenues for their self-improvement to be the best versions of what they can possibly be. And that should be in the infrastructure that we need, in the service delivery, and in the policies that you put in place that motivate and enhance the potential of the people that you lead. And one of the areas where we really need to pick lessons is the area of facilitation, the kind of systems around our leaders in terms of enabling them to work. Really, when we look at some of the expenses in our settings, in the African setting, in terms of the leadership, and I don't want to limit it to political leadership.
The trappings of
for
power.
Me, I'm looking at leadership across the board. Because when you look at our church leaders, you know, they are driving the latest versions of cars. They are sleeping in palaces, especially when you go to some of our church leaders, the houses they live in are hotels, you know, gold-plated this and that. That is leadership. Even when you go to the leadership in the corporate world, you know, businesses, you know, the CEOs, the trappings that come along with those offices. You find one individual, 4 cars, for this and that, this and that. I think that does not rhyme well with the lessons that Pope Francis leaves us.
All right.
When you look at the political leadership, you know, fleet of vehicles, you know, lead car, you know, the chase car, you know, you just look at an officer, a minister, or a departmental head. So I'm looking at the entitlement and the sense of entitlement
Vis-a-vis servant leadership.
vis-a-vis servant leadership. He demonstrated, like Sarah has clearly stated, he abandoned the palace with all the trappings and chose to go and put up in a small guest house. Now that is leadership, servant leadership, by practice and by example and by demonstration.
All right.
So I want leaders, for all of us leaders, to have a sense of reflection in terms of what we pull to ourselves at the expense of those that are supposed to benefit from our service.
All right.
Even at a family level, you find that you are buying suits of maybe 1,000, whatever, and then your kids, maybe they are not going to school. I have cases where we have pompous people in this country, very able. They are living well, they are driving nice cars, but their kids are being chased from school for school fees. And yet he goes out for a drink in an evening and he drinks an expensive drink of $1 million. But the child is being chased for 200,000 school fees. So let's reflect. And I want to use the home as the best unit of leadership. So in all our leadership positions across board, let's pick lessons from Pope Francis.
Right, Spectrum Xtra on Radio 1 FM 90. Let's take that break. When we return, I'll put the same question to Dr. Sarah Bilete on the issue of servant leadership and the constant arguments that this has continued to elude Africa, and we pay tribute to the late Pope Francis. Stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90. We continue after this break. Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Xtra, reviewing the major event of the week. Our focus is on paying tribute to the late Pope Francis, who passed on Easter Day. His funeral is taking place tomorrow, and hundreds of leaders from across the globe are going to attend this occasion in the Vatican. And here in Uganda, we actually told we sent in a delegation headed by the Speaker of Parliament, who had an opportunity to have audience with the late Pope for several times. And today there was a special mass held at Lubaga Cathedral where they prayed for his soul, and a number of statements which were made there actually showing that indeed the late Pope Francis has left behind a huge, deep legacy which we should reflect on, and also for leaders to take lessons and probably change their ways given the way they are managing issues within the society. My guest today, I have the Honorable Mike Sebalu, Team Leader, Africa Integration Agenda. He did serve this country as a member of the East African Legislative Assembly. He was in the Pan-African Parliament. He was also in our local parliament as Busiro East MP. He has been governor in the lottery. So he's one of those people who has contributed in terms of leadership in this country. Also, our second guest is Dr. Sarah Bilete, the Chief Executive Officer at the Center for Constitutional Governance. She is an experienced election observer. She heads a global network of election observers. She's also a pundit on governance and human rights issues across the globe. Now, Dr. Sarah Bilete, let me bring you in on this issue of servant leadership. It's one of the attributes that have been reflected on when it comes to the legacy of Pope Francis. What is your take about this? Why has servant leadership eluded many countries, especially in Africa?
Well, borrowing Genome Chemuntu's phrase, it's service above self, in simple terms. And when you look at the legacy of the Pope, even on his last day, against the medical advice of his doctors, he wanted to serve the people. He wanted to serve that Easter message to the people. And that is a clear demonstration of real service above self. So what does it mean for leaders to be called servant leaders? First of all, they should be trust-driven by consistency. Do what you preach. Do as you say. Many leaders don't. The second element is inclusivity. How do you treat people? Do you have favored people? Do you work for all? Do you work for a few? Do you have favored cliques? Or you are inclusive and you serve community or humanity in general without favorites? The other element is purpose-centered. What is it that you want to do in this leadership that you seek? What's the purpose? So when you look at the leadership in Africa broadly, you find that most of the priorities are merely slogans. People say what they don't mean just for populist support and appeal, and they do the opposite. You can draw examples from all over Africa. Many leaders, you can't take their word to the bank. And as the English say, words mean nothing. You watch the actions. If you take our own national example, there's a big gap between words and actions of our leaders. What is called the fundamental change, what is all these serious statements, serious speeches, but nothing to write home about in practical sense. You look at the issue of priorities, practices, budgeting, or what do you front in how you appoint your cadres. Is it meritocracy or patronage? If it's patronage, it's selfish. You're creating cliques around yourself. If you are working with people on merit, you whether you know them or not, you are a servant leader. You want the best for the community or country that you serve. And this is largely missing in Africa, and that's why we are in a crisis that we are in of the leadership or governance that the continent is facing.
So what would we need to actually move into that area of servant leadership? Because there's an argument out there that society will always get the leaders they deserve.
Yes and no. Sometimes society is conditioned. For example, in our situation, we have high commercialization of politics. People no longer vote for value or quality of leaders. They vote for money. Who has brought money? What have you? So there is degeneration on both the side of those offering with themselves for leadership and the people choosing leaders. So if you say society gets what they deserve, maybe you need to analyze what conditions have led Ugandan voters, for example, to vote leaders because of a piece of soap, a pack of salt, or sweets, or little money given here and there, usually less than 10,000. Why would anybody cast their sovereign right? Because you have 2,000 in your hands. And when you ask most of these voters, they justify that it's better than nothing. So how have we found ourselves in that situation of degeneration that people do not value their democratic vote and they sell it for peanuts? So society sometimes is, I don't know whether that is now the society we deserve. I don't know what has created this kind of desperation within the people and hopelessness to the extent that a piece of soap makes them happy to smile away and give mandate for 5 years for people who are going to bank the country with no focus on priorities or inclusivity or purpose-driven objectives.
All right. Let's hear from Honorable Mike Sebalu. As Dr. Sarah Birete was actually submitting, you were busy jotting down some issues, and I imagine probably you actually need to jump in. But one of the questions that I want to put to you, Honorable Mike Sebalu, the role change, the way the roles change, when we are in election time, we get all these people who want to get into office. Sometimes they even move with their family members. They even kneel down and beg for the vote and say, please vote for me when I go to Parliament, when I go to this office. This is what I intend to do. This is what I intend to deliver on your behalf. The moment they are sworn in, the roles actually change. Suddenly, there's an interesting book that I read not so long ago, which actually had the title, When Servants Turn into Masters. How do we deal with that issue of servant leadership when we still have this kind of reality that even Dr. Sarah Birete talks about, elections that deliver leaders who suddenly switch us around?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I just want to correct Sarah. The statement of service above self cannot be owned by Jenu Muntu.
No.
Actually, it is
Rotary.
It is a Rotary,
Rotary
motto.
slogan.
Thank you.
It's a Rotary motto slogan. Service above self.
Thank you.
And to demonstrate it in Rotary, you pay to serve.
All right.
When in all our settings, we are paid to serve.
I think what Dr. Sarah wanted to say, it's one of the values of the
National-
Alliance for National
And now I
Transformation.
wanted to bring it in perspective where it applies
Yeah.
and where it is the order of the day.
Okay.
Because you pay your dues, and on top of that, you go and serve, you even contribute. And
At
you
your
do
cost.
At your cost. So you serve at your cost.
Yeah.
Now that demonstrates that you are serving above self.
Yeah.
And you do better to others than what you can
So
do.
they are not trappings.
No trappings.
Really?
Because even as you serve, you are putting in money. You support the foundation which helps us to do good in the world. Now that is the beginning.
You are looking so good. I actually thought they were trappings from lottery.
No.
Hey.
It is peace of mind.
Peace of
when
mind.
you do good, and when you do good, God rewards
feel
you.
good.
All right.
God rewards you.
Okay.
So
carry on.
now, where we really need to appreciate is that leadership. We should not take leadership as a job. We should not take leadership as a business. We should not take leadership as a career. We should simply take it as service. And not service for our benefit as leaders, but service to benefit those that are being led. Now, once we are intentional about that, deliberate about that, and purposeful about that, then we should be able to send the right vibes across the community. Because once you come with a view of serving, and the people get to appreciate the service, and we really streamline service delivery and make it the hallmark of leadership, then we can start on a process of empowering the people with awareness for them, because civic education is not doing good. We should empower our people to know the value of service, to know who exactly leaders should be and what are the obligations of the leaders. When you go into parliament and the first business is to increase your remuneration, it should be to show what you are going to do. We've gotten to a situation where when you go to introduce your idea to a few people in your village, the first thing they ask, what is your budget? And if you give a modest budget, when they go out, they will say, Najatumenya. This guy will not be easy to sell because you've not put right, the numbers are not adding up. So once we do that, then we should be able to be felt by the community, to be heard, and to be seen. So using leadership as an investment with a view of a return on investment,
money in politics,
is definitely the wrong politics. Rather, we should put emphasis on ability, capacity, and willingness to even sacrifice for the benefit of the people that we lead. Right. And that way we will be demonstrating, like Pope Francis, leaving that mansion, that palace, and he comes here, we should lead by example. But we have been attracted to pompous lifestyles. You find someone has just become an MP, the first thing is to buy a monster of a vehicle. Actually, that's where
you provide them the money.
Even that money bit is not something really that should be encouraged. And that's where, may he so rest in peace, the late MP for Kawempe,
Muhammad
Segilinya. He set up some very good model, which even in his own party became an issue where they were saying, that was becoming too good and spoiling the entire game plan.
Transformative leadership. Yeah,
because he was able to use the money for the car, and he was able to set up some facility. He was able to buy he was able to demonstrate that it's not about him, it's about, but once we don't get out of the body politic where it is about you and not about the people you are leading, I think that's where the Pope really demonstrated a great deal of a unique servant leadership model that we need to emulate and champion in our spaces.
All right. We've been joined by our third panelist, Dr. James Tweheyo. Dr. James Tweheyo is a member of the Central Executive Committee of the ruling NRM party, but he's also a member of that party's electoral commission, one of the new members of that electoral commission. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. James Tweheyo. You came in at a point when your colleagues here were dissecting the legacy of Pope John Paul, and we had reached a point where we were looking at what they call servant leadership, because it's one of the things that he actually exuded as a leader, being able to use the resources at his disposal to cause change among the lives of the people across the globe. What is your quick, analysis of his legacy?
I was with you even when I was not physically here. I was on my 90 99.00
In your car radio.
in my car radio. One thing is very clear. You know, it is one thing to hold a position of authority and forget yourself. It's another one to hold a position of authority and be yourself. And that's what differentiated our Pope from other people. When I was a little boy, incidentally, I'm not a Catholic, but I have so many Catholic friends and people believe I am a Catholic. And actually, if Catholicism means having the faith in something, then I can comfortably be. When we were young, a little boy would swear that even if you make a call to the Pope, I will not change this. Or even if you make a call to the Pope, I will not do that. So it shows you how the world held the Pope in esteem. But our own Pope didn't look at it from that perspective. And I believe even when he was a little boy, 80 years ago, or 80 or something years ago, he believed, he had that faith. So first of all, keeping the faith is not a simple issue. Sarah was making a mention here that even in our own leaders here, both friends and foes, it is hard to keep the faith. To keep your word, to be consistent, to live by what you believe in and believe in what you must live. And that was our Pope.
Can you give us some examples?
He kept his faith. They had already demonstrated it, how he left the luxury of the Pope Nuncio and decided to live with the people, how he accepted that he came from this humble background and therefore he must live it and demonstrate it and live it with the same people, how he took trouble, you know, by kissing the feet. By the way, you don't know the difference these people hold, especially the white people, what they fear about us. Me, I've been in all these countries. For a white, by the way, live around the Pope, being a Pope. For a white person to come and kiss your dirty feet, just to kiss them, that demonstration alone should take him to heaven. I want to tell you that. That going beyond the bias, the ordinary bias of a person, of a different color, different race, to just come and fraternize with the race that is this different. Some of these people look at it from a different angle, by the way. It is something as deep, as big as that.
It's a very big statement.
It's a very big, gigantic statement, which people should never forget.
But the question is, how come the leaders of South Sudan who benefited from that gesture have not heeded?
They may not have heeded, but I'm very sure, without any little doubt, that in their hearts, they know it. In their hearts, they feel it. So sometimes...
And they must be reflecting on
they must be.
At the moment.
And by the way, there are things we simply take for granted. My Pope. I call him my Pope because when he came, I was lucky to have been around. I was a member of the Central Executive Committee when he went to State House. I watched him. I didn't touch him, to be honest, but I watched him with all the feelings of, you know, being close to a very important person. When he came to Uganda, you remember the other small vehicle he was moving in? That thing, it was a sort of carriage. Couldn't he have got even a better one if he wanted? Why? Why did he go into that? Do you think it was meant for a show, anything else? It is his element of humility, to be with the people he deserves to be with. So that humility and keeping that faith and coming to reach out to the people who are in need, because we are in need, all of us, by the way, even us in here. We need that spiritual healing that should bring us to a country that we deserve, a country that needs peace, a country that needs harmony, a country that needs to live better in our own lives. So when my brothers and sisters were talking about humility, this Pope demonstrated it. This Pope lived peacefully. By the way, to keep a whole world together, don't think it is easy to be a glue that brings us together. I was watching on TV when he was at Namgongo, working with the Archbishop Ntagali when they were going to open something. And I said, oh, but here is the man. He doesn't come here for only the faith of the Catholics. He came for the Muslims. He came for the and
he went
by
to
the way,
mosques.
I think he's a lucky man.
He championed interfaith dialogue.
He's a lucky man. He went to rest when Jesus was resurrected, and he must be somewhere smiling. Me, there's some things we don't
Take for
we
granted.
simply ignore, but I think he is. Yes, he must be.
All right.
He must be smiling somewhere. If we go in the spiritual world, after all, when we were born, who knew that you'd be born? But somewhere your spirit was there. We are here. Where are we going after?
All right.
If we knew where we're going after, I think some of us will one day meet him and shake our hands and say, oh, here we are. We want you to pray for us, to intercede for us.
All right. Now, Dr. Sarah Benete, one thing that you put across in your initial submissions at the beginning was the issue of social justice as a key issue. And when we look at leadership, being able to advance social justice, can you define it for us and show us how actually the Pope stood for social justice and what we can learn from his attributes?
Well, social justice in simple terms means fighting for the wellness of society. It's a socially justice or justifiable society should have protection, social protection for everyone. That means fighting poverty or putting in place means for social protection of the vulnerable and poor and marginalized. It means access to justice, equality before the law. Are all people treated equally before the law? If you look at, for example, conflict, if you look at the Gaza children that have been the biggest victims of that conflict, what crime have they committed? What decision have they made to cause conflict of Israel and Gaza to be? Because 80% of death were children. That's genocide. If you look at the situations in Ukraine or Argentina, where the Pope was also fighting for political justice or political cooperation, and the reason he never traveled back home, that the political climate, he was fighting for social justice. How do you treat people who are of a different political opinion with you? He was against that. And that's what stood in his way from a homecoming visitors as a Pope. So these are some of the issues that the Pope, championed, especially poverty, because poverty cuts across. Sometimes we look at poverty as an Africa problem, but poverty cuts across. Even there are some poor areas in developed countries.
All right. So in terms of social justice, how are we doing as Ugandans, and what lessons can we learn from there?
Our social protection measures in Uganda are one thing. The poor are really like the wretched of the earth. Some of them don't access quality education. The teenage mothers, majority of them are from poor families. Those who drop out of school are from poor families. People who are evicted from land are poor families. They don't have any means of defending themselves. People dying of preventable diseases are poor. We don't have safeguards for the protection of the poor and minority in Uganda. We don't. We don't. We are not doing well on social protection.
All right. All right, and let's now switch on and go to Honorable Mike Sebalu. Very quickly, you have some issues to actually add on, but also very important. I wanted you to broaden for us the four-way test and how it relates to this subject that we're having today.
Yeah, I just want to add something on what Sarah has put. There's this day, diversity, equity, and inclusion. People have been misrepresenting it, using a different dimension. But it is one area that really enhances social justice, because you are acknowledging that we are diverse. And within that, put mechanisms to ensure that we benefit from our different levels and backgrounds, coexistence in a manner that is mutually beneficial. Then when you talk about equity, equity in resource distribution, equity in access to opportunities.
Yeah.
That is something that is very, very important, regardless of what we are. And then inclusion. Let our policies be inclusive, financial inclusion and all other forms of inclusion. So that goes to reinforce the social justice element. And in terms of equity, there are areas where you find vicious circle of poverty vis-a-vis vicious circle of prosperity.
Yeah.
You find the children of the well-to-do will go to the best schools, will be sponsored in the best universities in the world, and they will attract the best employment opportunities. So for them, they are enjoying that cycle of prosperity and the benefits of prosperity, while the other side is wallowing in the same. Now, the 4-way test is on 4 pillars. The first pillar is truth. In whatever you think, say or do, because it is basically defining a human being. A human being can be appreciated from what they think, what they say, and what they do. That is the totality of a human being. Now, in all that you think, say, or do, first, is it the truth? Whatever you think or say, is it the truth? Now, that is something the Pope has done in spirit and letter. That is something that we have in deficiency. You find people losing jobs out of cooked up stories. You find people are promoted on fake whatever. So it is an area that we really need to do in terms of. Then the second is fairness. Most of the wars are about unfairness. In various ways, the way you can interpret it. Then the third pillar is building goodwill and better friendship. And goodwill is like understanding each other, appreciating each other, valuing each other, being there for each other. Now that goodwill will bring better friendship. And where you have that environment, definitely chances are that the community will enjoy a better quality of life. And fourth, beneficial to all concerned. What you think, what you say, what you do, is it beneficial? When you tell a lie about a friend, when you malign a friend, when you set up a friend and get them in the wrong way and have them punished for wrong reasons, is it beneficial?
All right.
So those are 4 pillars, and I want to believe that if we lived it, not simply said it, the world would definitely be a much better place.
Spectrum X on Radio 1 FM 90. Let's go for this break, but keep your comments coming via the WhatsApp line 0703-090-090. When we return from the break, I'll sample some of your comments, and the panelists will respond to some of the issues you're putting across as we continue paying tribute to the late Pope Francis, whose funeral is taking place tomorrow at the Vatican. Thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Xtra, reviewing the major event of the week, but we're paying tribute to the late Pope Francis, a story that has dominated headlines this week across the world following his death on Easter Day. And tomorrow he will be laid to rest at a place of his own choosing outside St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican. One of the things people have actually been saying, he chose a simple life. And he also changed some of the traditions, including refusing to be buried in 3 coffins. And he chose to be buried as a simple man, and his tomb will be in the earth, and as opposed to others whose tombs have been, designed with marble and all those expensive stones. The guests on the panel today, Dr. Sarah Bidete, Chief Executive Officer at the Center for Constitutional Governance, the Honorable Mike Sebalu. He is team leader at the Africa Integration Agenda, served this country as IALA representative. He was in the Pan-African Parliament, in our local parliament here, and he has just been serving as District Lottery Governor. Also in studio, we have Dr. James Tweheo. He is a member of the Central Executive Committee of the NRM Party. He's also a member of the NRM Electoral Commission. We have comments coming in, and I want to begin with a comment from Lake, who says, Pope Francis, the first Latin American pontiff and tireless advocate for marginalized, revolutionized the papacy by washing the feet of refugees, declaring, "Who am I to judge?" on LGBTQ inclusion, and challenging global powers to prioritize compassion over greed, leaving a legacy as the people's pope who made faith a refugee for the wounded. When we have another comment coming in from another listener here, Ajus Ronald Dino, who says, good evening, Kenneth. It's going to take the world centuries to match the Pope's legacy, which he lived with distinction. His indiscriminate love, the humility, down to earth, a liberal man, and very accommodative at that. He was highly ranked, but never did he at any point massage his personal egos, a thing many of us are slaves to, and always clamor to advance. Oh, what a unique man. May the sovereign Lord grant him eternal repose. And that is a comment from Ajus Ronald Dino. Then we have a comment from Drani. 1, ask Honorable Sebalu if Uganda has servant leaders. 2, ask him who are the people chasing Ugandans off their roads yet driving on wrong lanes. Then we have another comment coming in from Robert Juko, listening in from Jeru, who says, thank you, Spectrum Extra. Dear Kenneth, like what Sarah is saying, many of our leaders' deeds contradict their words. Can you imagine? The wealthy and fame-seeking leaders are dying to attend the Pope's funeral. May Pope's soul rest in eternal peace. Well, that's the feedback we have gotten so far, and I want to begin with you, Honorable Mike Sebalu. If you have quick responses to some of the issues, there's a comment that came in from Drani. He was asking you particular questions about the Ugandan situation.
Yeah, thank you very much. Definitely, we do have some servant leaders. They may not be many, they may not be in the majority, but we do have them. Those that have demonstrated willingness, availability, and readiness to serve over and above. And we are not short of them, even on the African continent. We have them, and the one that I really want to bring out is the late Julius Mwalimu Nyerere. To me, he could serve as an epitome of what Pope Francis has been. He may have had his failings, but the way he managed himself in terms of wealth accumulation, there's no big building associated with his name in Dar es Salaam or Dodoma. Even in retirement, he took a simple lifestyle, chose to go back to his home in Butiama. Even he chose to be buried in Butiama in a simple way. Even in terms of his family, he really prevailed and ensured that. So we have them.
He never brought his relative close to power.
We have them, and I just want to use someone who has passed the test.
And on record, there's an ongoing process to actually canonize him.
Yeah. So I want to use him. He served. He lived a simple life. Even in retirement, remained simple. Died. But even up to now, we hear very good memories, very good, and even the way he was able to usher in a new regime in terms of leadership. So,
but you have not answered the question of the listener. He said, in Uganda, you've given us an example of Tanzania.
For us, we put
East
our
Africans.
context. No, from the word go, we put our context to the African level. And the first question you asked us was about the African level. So I don't want to judge someone who is not finished his work. I want to judge those that have finished, and Julius Yamaririza, and we are able to judge him. And he, according to me, passes the test.
All right.
And everything around him is quite synonymous with what we are describing of Pope Francis.
All right. Dr. Sarah.
I think in Uganda, if I was to trace hard and identify a servant leader, I would pick maybe Ndugurugunda. Ndugurugunda, he could have had his shortcomings, but I don't think he did any act publicly that was regarded as selfish to benefit him as a person. I don't know of any. He was never caught up in any of these money issues. He doesn't live a luxurious, extravagant life in opulence. He served the people the way he could, but I believe that he served the common good. There are other people like the likes of Professor Nsibambi. We have had a bit of good leaders. The late Professor Nsibambi. I would also qualify him to a bigger extent.
Professor Lugumbrias.
Yes, as a servant leader. Those are the two names that quickly come to me on the Ugandan scene. But on the African continent, I want to look at the immediate deceased president of Namibia, Dr. Haig. Why do I pick him as a servant leader? He fought poverty in the country and banned people seeking treatment abroad, so that all the leaders will be pushed to make sure the health facilities in the country are working for everyone, including themselves.
He didn't just ban, he actually went for treatment abroad, saw what was being offered there and brought it
So
back.
when it was necessary, when he was sick, he explained, he released the statement before, that why he is going out of the country and at his cost, not public cost. But he had to explain why he was seeking expertise that was lacking in Namibia and with his personal money. Those are some of the acts that you don't see. And he even brought that expertise back home, that he thought at his own cost. If you look at our country, the money we spend on treatment abroad, the state of our health care, how people suffer to access health care, even us who think are struggling middle class, we feel the pinch. Whenever a family member falls sick, you struggle, you are in loans, you don't even know outside the political class who is really okay in the country. It's difficult to tell. So those are some of the acts that really demonstrate serving society beyond your selfish needs. Yeah.
All right. None of you have talked about the late Nelson Mandela. Let me go to...
before you even go to Mandela, you know, let's not run away from where we are.
There's somebody who was asked, Drani actually says, he asked a question, a follow-up question, says, he's asking for your judgment. Is President Museveni not a servant leader?
Okay, he had asked me, let me give some
he actually
caption.
said, in Sebalu's judgment, is President Museveni a servant leader?
Yeah, I think I can qualify him to be a servant leader. He may have elements that may... I want to put it to the idea of seeing a country challenged the way it was in 1980, then putting to line, anyone... All those people that did go to the bush, in my view, were servant leaders.
Including the late John Kazora, who was buried yesterday.
All of them who went, regardless of what happened thereafter and the dynamics and the contradictions, the fact that they put the only life they have, because you can only have one life, and you put it on the line, that is the highest form of sacrifice that you can make. But definitely there are different levels of judgment. But for me, from that point of view, we have them. They may not have kept their level of servant leadership. Maybe with the time, certain contradictions came in. But they would pass for that act of sacrifice.
Dr. Sarability, that look.
She agrees and disagrees.
The way you are looking at Mike Sebalu, you smile, you put on a tough face. I'm just imagining what is going on in your mind.
No, when these people came from the bush, I was among the Ugandans that were young children. I remember the excitement as a young child. I was in primary 4. These are revolutionaries. These are what? Big statements. The promises. We thought we had reached the promised land. But where we are today,
about fundamental change.
Where we are today, we are in the middle of a desert. So when you look at that journey, the promise was never fulfilled. A lot of course, if you look at the group, that act could have been, it's obvious, an act of sacrifice. But when you ask the acts in office, where was it an act for self? sacrifice or for national sacrifice. I think this is the debate that we struggle with today.
All right.
Did these people sacrifice for the nation or for themselves and their families? That's the controversy.
Dr.
The
James, where are
answer
you?
to my sister's question is yes and no. Some did.
So you are acting like her.
Absolutely. I must be honest.
Happy and sad at the
Yes,
same time.
you must be honest. It is true quite a number came in. You remember the other cadres. I remember even in my education department there when I later came in, there was a man called Iyamulemi. He was a cadre. There were some people who were real cadres who were working for the country, sacrificing everything, and there are others who said, now we have the opportunity, let's take it standing, not even seated. But away from that, I wanted to get back to the reality of the servant leadership and the sacrifice. If you all remember in 1997, when the Aboke girls were captured and taken by Konyi,
Abducted.
and that particular nun called
Yeah,
Bruna,
my God.
who said, kill me,
Yeah, I'm looking for
or
my
take
girls.
me, but let my girls survive.
Yeah,
Who else can offer that?
yeah.
It was the real demonstration of the servant leadership, of the sacrifice, and one
protect
should not
the
blind
girls.
himself from that.
Yeah.
Even Dr.
We have people
Rukia.
like Dr.
Yeah,
Lukuya.
even Dr. Rukia. Yeah.
Dr. Rukia,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
definitely.
Those are
Yeah.
examples. We still have people who are there.
Even this Kagaro of Budo Junior.
Yes.
That
Namaganda.
Kagaro-
Namaganda,
Yes,
yes.
yes.
Rescuing other
So we should
people.
not blind ourselves from the realities. Yes, we may have had a bigger perspective of people who are there for self-aggrandizement, but somewhere in the sky, you can see a trick of light that maybe the faith is still there.
All right.
And that's
Good evening.
where we should appreciate the Pope.
Good evening, Radio 1 Spectrum Xtra. This is Dri Leba from Arua listening live. Thank you very much for tuning in. Mr. Mike has talked about something very, very important. I wish if all leaders could view issues like him. They said that Pope lived an exemplary life of simplicity, minimalism, and love for the underprivileged, which is a devoid quality in our leaders where pomp and corruption abound. He knew he was a visitor on earth and chose not to amass any wealth. How I wish our leaders today would emulate his humility and empathy. We wouldn't have death in Gaza, Ukraine, and elsewhere. Then we have another comment. Thank you, Anderson, for the show. I will forever remember the Pope for his humility. I wish Dr. Toyeyo could emulate that. Humility is apologizing when you get to a show late.
I apologize sincerely for coming late, and I want to take that humility
All
to
right.
you all.
Hey. Then we have another comment, Robert. What's Honorable Mike Sebalu's view on President Museveni's statement that he is not anyone's servant? Then we have another comment. I wish leaders in Uganda will take notes from Rotary style of leadership where it's service above self, term limits and respect of the constitution and systems. Thank you, Honorable Mike, for preaching the Rotary leadership gospel. May the Pope soul rest in peace. He was exemplary, chose a simple life, even when he was so powerful. Why does power get to our leaders' heads? Such a shame. Thank you, Sarah, for the social safeguards issue. The gap between the rich and the poor is so wide. That's a comment from Sheila. Then we have another comment. I disagree. Rugunda has always supported a brutal regime and has never denounced excess in this regime. Empathy has lacked, and he has served NRM. Then we have another comment. Good evening, Spectrum Extra. Please tell Honorable Sebalu not to lie to Ugandans. The leader said he is not a servant of anyone. That's from Dennis. Then we have another comment. Servant leadership. Maybe Mike Sebalu doesn't know what a servant leader is. Otherwise, it's only a psychotic person who can qualify Mr. Museveni as a servant leader. Well, those are the comments that are coming in. Mike, you want to jump in, Honorable Sebalu?
Yeah, I think my statements were clear. The act of sacrifice for Ugandans, I think no one can doubt that. You may have your disagreements and other aspects thereafter, but that act of sacrificing one's life, and I've not limited it to an individual. I've limited it to all the team that went. Some left even from university straight and went. So I'm looking at that act. It may not be a full lifestyle or a full cycle, but there could be an act of sacrifice that one does. And I think we need to appreciate that. There could be other aspects that may not live up to the expectations of Ugandans, but those I've qualified my statement. Now, like one person said, doing good is the rent we pay for our stay on earth. Let's just be good. Let's do good in the world. Let's use good the offices that we hold. Let's do good using the authority that we hold. Let's do good using the power that we have, be it power of seniority, be it power of resource allocation, be it power of influence. Let's use it for the good. And Pope Francis has demonstrated that. And when we look at these issues, I don't want us to limit them to the leadership at the highest level. Let it begin with each one of us. Because at the end of the day, the transformation and what the Pope was preaching was for each and every one of us to be the best version of ourselves. So let us all pick lessons and let us all preach the same and ensure that we build a critical mass of people who do good, not for themselves, but do good because it is the right thing to do, and doing good is the best way to go about it. And therefore, we can change this world, leave it a much better place. So, my message, in your responsibility, wherever you are, let's pick these lessons. And let's hope and pray that even our leaders at strategic level, be it at the political level, be it at the corporate level, the economy, be it the traditional leaders, be it the church leaders, I'm looking at it from the cross-cutting nature of leadership. If we are to transform the world and Uganda, all of us in leadership at whatever level and whichever sector should pick good lessons, not only pick them for purposes of saying them out, but apply them and adopt them as our way of life and a culture in leadership.
All right. Dr. James Tuaheyo, I wanted to take the lead in analyzing this particular matter. We know there will be a funeral of the Pope tomorrow. After that, the cardinals will go into the Sistine Chapel to choose from amongst themselves a new leader. One,
that's right.
It's going to be a transition, and in most cases it has been smooth. And the people waiting outside the St. Peter's Square will receive the new Pope and jubilate regardless of where they are coming from. That's another very critical and very important issue. But also, there are voices that we are hearing. Probably it's time for an African Pope. Let me hear your views on the issue of transition, how it's being done, and whether we can take lessons from it.
Transition normally
In the political
comes with
sense of
anxiety, comes with excitement, comes with hope, sometimes sense of ownership. Say now we're there.
And it can end up with frustration.
And it can end up with terrible frustration. We all need to pray. Because the Pope, having been a symbol of peace, a symbol of compassion, the glue that brings all of us together, if there is a mistake that comes there, by God's grace it should be sorted before it happens. So we pray for those who are going to, first of all, elect the Pope, to cleanse their hearts and go and do it faithfully. So that subsequently what comes out is what we shall all believe in and take. And as people start now taking that sense of ownership, possibly it should be the African. No, it can be a human being. What we should pray for is it should be a human heart. It should be a compassionate heart. It should be a person who takes on in transit all these good elements that we have seen and even more.
Yeah, to emulate the good example.
The good examples, to pick from where the pontiff has stopped and move on to a better world. Otherwise, challenges are always there. The world is changing. The world is changing. The Pope has been advocating against war. He has been. So if the Pope is to keep quiet and to say, okay, maybe I'm from Africa, maybe I'm from Latin America or India or whatever, it wouldn't augur well before man and before God. And we pray that something good happens. We pray that whoever comes, whoever is elected, when we see the white smoke, we shall keep our eyes glued to the chimney. If we ever see the white smoke, then this white smoke should be white and pure, both in heart and in action.
Dr. Sarah Biret.
I think for me it doesn't matter where the Pope comes from. The Pope serves humanity. The Pope serves the whole world. He's a global leader. These issues of regional balance, this balance that has degenerated the quality of leadership, the canons guided by the spiritual guidance and canons of the church choose the best suited person to take forward the Catholic Church and to serve humanity. Yeah, for me it doesn't matter where the Pope comes from.
Is that so? There's people have said the Catholicism is growing rapidly in Africa and in Asia. And
the biggest number is in America.
From the time the faith began,
the biggest number of Catholics is in America. Africa has 20%. America has about 40%. Canons guided by...
How come in that particular regard you're not pushing the principles of fairness and the equality?
No, but you people, we need to... What is the function of the Pope? Every office has a different function. Even in leadership, when we push for inclusivity, including gender and affirmative action, it doesn't mean that we should drop quality and competence. No. So let the canons choose the best suited person to take forward the Pope in a changing contemporary world. Yeah, the church has a challenge because this has been a reformative Pope, different with a different legacy. He has reawakened the Catholic faith, but also served people beyond the Catholic Church. So there are big shoes to fill. So to identify a person to transit from Francis alone is a challenge for these canons. So now when you put the other issues of balance color, balance continent, balance what, when will they get merit of a person to serve humanity befitting that office?
All right. Would you like to say something about the transition process?
The church has a firm transition process. This is 226 popes. Yeah, so they have done it regularly. They've mastered how it's done. Although Pope Francis reduced the days through which a new pope could be
chosen.
Yeah, chosen. He made some adjustments, but the instruments, the systems are the systems are in place and are very firm. So the canons will sit. Those aged 80 years and below, I know that ours could not qualify because it's above 80. So those are some of the requirements for who qualifies to take part in those proceedings of choosing the Pope. It's a very firm process, and they cherish consensus. That's why sometimes you get black smoke, then white smoke when this consensus has been arrived at. I know when Francis was the runners-up with the Benedicto, the one time we got black smoke, and it was really surprising because they were number 1, number 2. Then they went back, and then later we got white smoke. So it's a very democratic process, well structured, and there is no need for anyone to worry. That's why the Vatican is at peace, celebrating the life of Pope Francis.
All right, Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. Let's go for a break. When we return, I will ask Mike Sevalu to also give his comments on the issue of transition, but also the manner in which a new Pope will be elected. Before we connect this to the political agenda in our country, we have an election coming up next year, 2026, and there's some things that have been happening during this week. We'll have a say about them before we actually close this show. Let's go for a break now. Keep your comments coming via the WhatsApp line 0703 090 090. Spectrum Extra continues after this break. Thank you so much for staying with us on the Spectrum Extra. Review the major events of our week. Our focus on paying tribute to the late Pope Francis, and the panel, Dr. James Tuheo, member of the Central Executive Committee of the NRM Party, member of the Electoral Commission there. Dr. Sarah Birete, Chief Executive Officer at the Center for Constitutional Governance, Pandit on Governance and Human Rights Issues, Chairperson of a global network of election observers, the Honorable Mike Kennedy Sevalu, Team Leader Africa Integration Agenda, served this country as a member of the Pan-African Parliament, member of the East African Legislative Assembly. He was also in our local parliament here as Busiro East Member of Parliament, and not so long ago he served as a governor in the Rotary. And next year we'll be having elections in our country, and most of the things we have actually been discussing do touch on the issue of governance and the decisions that Ugandans have to make, because as we were reflecting on the issue of servant leadership, it came out clearly that sometimes it's about the choices that the people make. But let me give an opportunity to Honorable Mike Sevalu to have a say on the transition that is going to happen in the Catholic Church, and what he makes of the process, how a new pope is arrived at.
Yeah, thank you very much. The Catholic faith has moved away to a level of a tradition. You know, when you get it to that level, it is tested. It's been there for years and years. It has ably and credibly produced 226 popes. So it is a tested system. So the system is solid, and it is well grounded. It is well tested. The structures are available, and they are aligned to the purpose of producing a new leader. The processes are well laid out and are very clear, and the procedures are understood across the board. So it is, I don't have any doubt that it is going to be a credible, legitimate process like all others have been, and it is going to produce a leader with the legitimacy to take over leadership of that big constituency. And the Electoral College is well known, because even within the cardinals, like she has indicated, those above 8 years are excused from this process. I think they want to be very sure of the sense of judgment
and interest in the future.
So that is a best practice, and I think it is going to be available to produce a credible leader. Now, regarding the kind of leader, one, we pray that the Electoral College are guided spiritually by God's spirit of to give them the best sense of judgment, be able to look at where the church is coming from, where it is, and where it is going, because it is a growing and an evolving organization where there are things that maybe need change, and 3 questions will guide them. 1, what is it that has been working in the Catholic Church that they should continue doing, and why? 2, what is it that they are doing that should stop being done? And 3, what is it that they are not doing that maybe they need to start doing? And with such, you should be able to have a leader who represents the past, the present, and the future, and more so on a very sustainable basis. We also pray for the candidates. You know, because you pray for the voters, but you also pray for those eligible to be presented.
I wish we knew what actually happens inside the Sistine Chapel, whether they nominate, campaign.
Whatever they do, those that are available, we need to pray for them. And those that have the mandate of voting, we need to pray for them. At the end of the day, God will choose a leader for the Catholic faith, and our responsibility is to receive that leader, support the leader, and bridge the gap between Pope Francis and the new leader that will emerge.
All right. Now, very quickly, let's switch our gears, and I want you, Dr. Sarah, to lead us in this particular issue. We are going for elections next year. What are some of the key issues you noted this week that, made headlines for you on the road to 2026, Dr. Sarah?
Well, today the Electoral Commission is displaying the voters' register for people to verify their details, places where they are going to vote from, but also to eliminate or point out people.
So the cleaning of the National Register has begun.
Whose names should be deleted from the register, those who died, those who shifted from those areas. And the Commission has a tribunal of 2 elders elected by magistrates to verify if you point out that somebody died or shifted. Is it true, or you are just erroneously eliminating people from the register? So the people should go out and verify their details, although there are challenges with the data issues being used by, but that's a story for another day. The NRM party has also put up their nomination exercise for internal primaries. We have a member, he will elaborate more on that. But there was also a call for reconciliation within the National Unity Platform, giving a ultimatum for those rebel MPs.
Is it an ultimatum or grace period?
I don't know what to call it. Maybe a grace period. Since it's an extension of an olive branch, maybe a grace period. But set out a date for those who want to go back to the fold and be regarded for renomination for party tickets to come back to the fold, which I think is a good way to go for a young party like the National Unity Platform. Reconciliation, disagreements are part of life.
Okay.
And they should be followed with reconciliation, dialogue, because when people come together to form a party, they should be joined by a greater common purpose, meaning that disagreement should not stand in their way. And we are here discussing the legacy of the Pope, who preached reconciliation, among others. So people should be able to get back to dialogue on table, solve their differences, and push ahead if they still share the beliefs and ideology of the national Unity
I'm sure you have seen the reaction from some of the people who fell out with this political party. They are asking a question that they are being told to go and apologize, and they're saying, apologize for what?
So either they don't know that they fell out. I don't know the list of people who are supposed to be going to apologize. I've seen one of the interviews for Honorable Joyce Bagara, who says that she's not aware that she fell out with the party. I think maybe it's the only one I've seen. Yeah, I don't know whether her name was mentioned. I have not paid attention to that.
Her constituency was mentioned by Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi.
Yes, then she should have a conversation with Mwanga Chivumbi to get details why it was mentioned. That's if she's interested. Because it's important for the viewers to note that May, which is the next week, will launch in an opening window for MPs to cross to other parties of their choice without losing their seat. 1 year into the general election or end of the life of Parliament, MPs are free to cross political lines. So if anybody wants to defect, we are entering that session of where people will defect, but also not lose their seats. So it's a good way for NUP to take advantage before the window opens, to say, hey, before you defect to other parties, we still consider you as our own. If you are willing to come back home.
All right.
Yeah.
Right, Honorable Mike Sevalu, let's hear from you. I know you are politically retired, if I may say, but not docile. You've been following what is happening.
The man is still very active and effective.
Well, you have not deployed him anywhere, despite his good values that he has gained for many years from even Rotary recently.
I think this is a politically exciting period. But it can also be very counterproductive depending on the way it is managed. We need to look at it from the viewpoint of the Parliament making all the necessary laws that need to be made, legislation in preparation for this.
On record, the Cabinet said there are no reforms. They have no proposals for reforms. The only person who stepped forward with the proposals for reforms is Honorable Matthias Mpuga, and he has not been given an opportunity to actually table them in the House.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying that we need to look at how that one is handled. Because at the end of the day, all the processes should be put on the table, looked at from their merits and demerits, and the decisions are made in the best interest of the country. So we need to look at Parliament from that perspective. What is their role? How are they prepared to do it? And how does that inform the decision of Cabinet at that level? And then we look at the Electoral Commission. Electoral Commission has a big budget to do this. I hope that money is made available in good time for them to be able to undertake their mandate timely and in a manner that allows fairness to be executed. Because at the moment we have issues like the FDC Katonga, they say their papers are with the Electoral Commission.
They are not registering their political
They are
party.
not registering their party. We hear some conversations around that. What does it reflect in terms of being politically inclusive, equity? I think there is something there. But on top of that, the Electoral Commission, like Dr. Sarah has indicated, has already kick-started the process. But I heard the chair today, some of the machines are not coming good in terms of performance, and they need to put that right. I think those fears need to be allayed from the word go. If there is need for procurement, let the procurement be. It would have been done before the exercise is undertaken. So when you start creating or bringing such contradictions, you bring good ground for discrediting the process. And once you get the process discredited, then the legitimacy of the outcome is put to question. So I really want the Electoral Commission to play fair, to play good, and to be ready in terms of logistics, in terms of human resource, in terms of budget, in terms of all the necessary support that they require to have a clean, credible process into the electoral season. Now, at the party level, we are having my colleague here is part of the newly constituted Electoral Commission. The NOP is also having discussions around that with the chairperson of their election management body. I'm yet to hear FDC, Najana Nkumbi. I'm yet to hear what they say in terms of their state of preparation, because now we need to look at the state of preparation. When the Electoral Commission National organizes itself well, but the internal electoral processes that are going to generate the candidates are not managed well, it has a bearing on the overall performance of the electoral process. So my considered view and opinion is that let the parties organize themselves so that they come up with credible internal electoral processes that are going to bring candidates that are supported and appreciated by, so that we minimize misunderstanding and conflicts within the parties, so that then the competition is at the national level where candidates from different parties are contesting for particular offices along the value chain of the electoral process.
All right.
Otherwise, I think the season is on. Now we just want to see different actors playing their role. But the message that I would like to share for the different political parties, electoral processes are simply tools of examining and getting us leadership. Let's not take it to a level of a war. Let's not take it to a level of confrontation, of conflict building. Let's at the end of the day appreciate that there is a life after the electoral process. There is a life whether you've made it or you've not made it, so that people put peace first. Then we can be able to have a credible, peaceful, and a good process of electing our leaders.
All right. Dr. James Toheyo, let's go to the No Change Party.
I have very high regard for Justice Byabakama. Not for anything else, but quite often for owning up for any mistake that happens that may not necessarily be his. For example, when he made a mention that, yes, we have 620 villages that seems to be out of polling stations. And he apologizes. By the way, it touches me when people said, oh, you came late and didn't apologize. And that's the right thing to do. So I have very high regard for him. But usually when we talk of peace and violent-free elections, we forget the fact that brings that violence, that violates the peace. It is only fairness that builds that peace. If people are seen to be treated fairly, they are peaceful. If people are seen to have been cheated or treated unfairly, they tend to build what we call pent-up anger. And that's where some either break down and withdraw or others fight. So in my view, we should put attention more to fairness. We should do fairness. We should be seen to be fair in both our actions and in whatever we do, in words. So this is where it all begins. As a party, we have already moved on. We have already set our ball rolling. We have called upon those people who are interested to take leadership within the party. And from yesterday, they were taking nomination forms. And many are coming up. For us, unlike the Electoral Commission, which has the polling stations, for us we have electoral villages. And every village in this country, the 720,000 villages, the 72,000 villages, is an electoral area. And in every village in this country, we shall have leaders elected. So sometimes when they talk about our 20 million people, some people don't understand that these people are there actually. And in reality, you see, the challenge people don't understand is that quite often, our people still put attention to individual merit. That's the little challenge we have as a party. So sometimes when they look at fairness, and some of our people appear not to be fair, then they revoke the other element of individual merit. That is why some people have been elected in areas that were predominantly NRM. They are not NRM, but they are elected by the NRM people. So we are trying to mend that issue, to sort out ourselves, to ensure that our people elect genuine people who are credible within the NRM, and we take the sweep of this country.
All right. We have comments coming in from the listeners. I'll read some of them very quickly. I wish Mike would have advised government to release Besigye before the Pope is buried. Besigye sacrificed himself for Mr. Museveni and the nation. That's a comment from Sharif. Good evening, Kenneth. Talking about servant leadership, I think President Idi Amin could be among them because he rescued the economy of Uganda. That's Solomon listening in from Chira. Bwana Lukaga, next time when you invite people to discuss such a topic, let them invite people who, when asked who is a servant leader in Uganda, they are able to have confidence to mention their own names. Otherwise, which moral authority do they have to make correct choice when they don't know how to be one or have no intent? That's a comment from Triagenda. Then the sacrifice Honorable Sebalu is talking about is like a cloth washed very clean, then put in dirt to dry. That's David in Nansana. Then he says another comment, when asked on examples of servant leaders, no one mentioned the Speaker of Parliament. Was she therefore the most appropriate person to lead the delegation representing us at the burial? Then we have another comment, Pop's election, excellent. Mr. Mike Sebalu, well said indeed. After the age of 80 years, one sense of judgment is jeopardized. Therefore, Uganda is at a greater risk. Then we have another comment, Spectra Extra. Kenneth, there is more intrigue and backstabbing in the election of the Pope than it even occurs in the NRM, only that it's done quietly. That's Robert in Kumi. Then we have another comment. This is from my friend Mike Sebalu. Within the Catholic constituency, cardinals that are above 80 years won't participate in the voting process. Mike's party is representing a candidate whose age is well over 80%. How many exactly, God knows. And that's a comment from Katura, listening in from Rwenshama, Bwambara in Irukunjiri district. Then we have another comment, why is NRM doing their LOC1 elections at the time when the EC is displaying its register? Government said there is no money to hold national elections for LOC1. That's a comment from Sharif. Honorable Mike Sebalu, why don't you join NUP? You will be deployed immediately. The Rotary values you believe in is exactly what NUP stands for, servant leadership. I have a question for Sarah. Why doesn't she join the rest for MP and add value to our parliament? She has the substance and qualities required of a good leader. Parliament is full of quiet legislators, yet she's very vocal and informed. That's Sheila listening in from Mukono. Well, as we respond to these comments, we'll also make our concluding remarks. I wonder who wants to go first.
Sarah should go.
All right.
Ladies first.
Dr. James Tweheyo.
I have no problem. Now, those comments are some genuine, others they have their own intentions. But let me make a quick mention of our current action as NRM. We are not erecting LC1s, we are erecting LC1 flag bearers. Those who will take the flag of NRM to go and compete with any person who is interested in the villages to come and take on the position of LC1.
And the question of the listener is that you are able to organize your own LC1 flag bearer elections, but you can't organize the national ones.
We are in government, but we are a government of our own as a party, and therefore all other institutions are doing their own duty. They know how they plan, and that is how we plan. Now, when we talk of all these things that are happening, then we should look at the country first. And when somebody made a mention that we are not able to mention ourselves as the first person, the first call for those who are self-sacrificing, my name alone suggests that. Tweheyo, do you know what it means? To sacrifice yourself, to give, to offer. And we have all tried, in all cases, by the way. Yesterday...
You abandoned the teachers.
My friend, I did my best in the available circumstances, and those teachers who are there up to today still appreciate. And we thank God for that.
All right.
Each of us here have made a contribution. We all have our little failures. But before man and God, we are seen and judged by only human beings, but God knows how to judge us best. Now, lastly, I want to thank the whole community in this country for coming together, particularly in this morning period, and being directional in looking at the Pope as the symbol of unity, as a symbol of authority, as a symbol that galvanizes together, and a symbol of peace. Let's continue this peace. Let's pray that the peace prevails, and if only our hearts could be cleaned by not the death of Jesus Christ, but also the follow-up of our Pope, this country will be a better place to live in.
Dr. Sarah.
Well, there was a comment on why I cannot join Parliament.
MP to B.
Maybe I will join Parliament, but not this time, because I believe I'm serving my country where I am. I have global obligations to serve the global network for domestic election observers. I have regional obligations as chair of Eastern Horn of Africa Election Observers Network, but I also have one more term as the ED for Center for Constitutional Governance, because we run on term limits. And I have a duty to organize an orderly transition for the institution to be carried forward. I am serving my country. I'm sure I know these respective capacities, but I can't rule out running for Parliament.
2026, is that?
I will not mention the date. Yes.
All right. All about Mike Sebanu.
Yeah, thank you very much. The observations I can say for every general rule, the exceptions, and they are always there in life. Regarding why not mentioning that we are all, I am a servant leader, I think it is not about me to judge myself. It is the actions. It's how people feel about my leadership. But for the record,
you don't want to blow your own trumpet.
Yeah, but for the record, I served in the Constituent Assembly, and we delivered the Constitution. I served in the 7th Parliament. I served in the inaugural Pan-African Parliament. I served in the East African Legislative Assembly 2 terms. I served the 2 terms at the Africa Peer Review Mechanism under the National Planning Authority, APRM. So I believe that has been service. And from such space where service is driven by office, by authority, by title, I'm still serving. I've served in Rotary as a voluntary person. I serve in the corporate world. I serve in the business space. I serve the church, and I serve in my civic capacity. So the totality of that is informed by voluntarism and sacrifice.
Any chance you can join NUP? Somebody is suggesting here.
I'm NRM.
All right.
And I'm not about to live NRM, Amen RM, and Amen RM.
All right. I'm afraid time is not on our side. We have to bring this discussion to an end. I want to thank you very much, dear panelists, for making time to be with us here to have this fruitful discussion. Also thank the listeners who have been with us, sent in their comments, questions that enrich the discussion. Thank you so much for tuning in. And now from me and the team here in studio, we want to wish you a fabulous weekend. And may the soul of the departed Pope Francis, who will be buried tomorrow, rest in eternal peace.